About 4 million people in Germany love horseback riding, which means they practice the sport regularly, a quarter of them even intensively. The sport demands not only a great performance of the rider, but above all, that of the horse. For more than 20 years, the Liechtenstein-based company Bemer has done research in the field of physical vascular therapy. Recently, the company made a name for itself in equestrian sports with its horse set. The fact that microcirculation plays a decisive role in physical health is well known to medical experts such as veterinary specialist Dr. Hermann Josef Genn.
Everyone is talking about microcirculation all the time. You have to imagine that every cell has a small engine, just like a car. So it needs appropriate nutrients. And these nutrients must be transported there. That's oxygen, that's protein, that's sugar. And if blood circulation doesn't function properly, then not enough of these products, of this nutrient supply, arrive in the tissue. At the same time, waste products are produced. Carbon dioxide is produced, similar to what happens in a car. And these exhaust gases must be disposed of.
Organisms can only function if these metabolic processes run smoothly. Otherwise, problems such as inflammation can occur. This would cause lasting damage to the health of the individual, especially the capillaries. The small blood vessels that are important for metabolism are often undersupplied. The horse set uses a very special method to stimulate vasomotion, the natural movement of the vessels.
The horse set consists of a horse blanket and cuffs. Incorporated into this blanket and the cuffs as well are magnetic coils, anatomically distributed to address the particular spots on the horse where we need more stimulation. And at the same time, there's a control unit and a battery for power supply. And when you put electricity through these coils, an electromagnetic field is created, which then stimulates the body or the tissue to improve metabolic processes.
Microscopically, we can clearly see that the movement within the vessels is restricted before the application. After stimulation by the blanket, which introduces a specific physical signal into the body by means of an electromagnetic field, blood flow through the vessels is improved significantly, and on-demand transport of white and red blood cells can be observed. In both amateur and high-performance sports, it's particularly important to stimulate the horse's blood circulation before training to prevent possible injuries such as pulled muscles.
What we've seen in the application is that when I apply the blanket for 10 or 15 minutes, the horses are already warmed up. So they basically save the 10-minute warm-up time. This is just like getting out of bed in the morning, when we need a few minutes to get going. Well, I do at least, until we can walk right again. And that time would be shortened by the Bemer blanket.
Dr. Genn, an equine specialist, was one of the first to test the horse set in use before it was launched. The focus was not only on the impact on and acceptance by the horse, but also on the handling.
So what we've done, we've provided ideas regarding the distribution of the coils, so they can be better distributed on the horse, and regarding a few other practical details. The control unit initially was in a place the horses could reach it, so when they got bored, they'd start nibbling on it. Things like that, like Velcro closures and the size of the blanket, making sure you cover as much of the body as possible. Everything was supposed to be easy to handle, including the bag, and those were our tasks, basically.
Dr. Genn tested the effect of the set in a double-blind study at his clinic, meaning one blanket was functional while the other one was not. The goal was to observe the animal's physical responses before and during surgical procedures.
After just 1 week, our assistant already said that if one of these blankets works at all, then it's this one and not that one. And it actually turned out like that in the subsequent analysis. The horses were somewhat calmer. We also did blood tests and noticed significant changes there too. A larger study was then initiated, which did provide some clear clues.
Other veterinarian specialists also leverage the blanket's effect, which is achieved by a specific physical signal. One of them is Dr. Olivier Brandenberger, a 33-year-old equine surgeon at the Hanse Clinic for Horses in Sittens in Germany.
So we started using the horse set a year ago. We perform a lot of surgeries and work closely with Dr. Genn. He gave us the idea. He said, try this with general anesthesia. We want every horse to leave the clinic without lasting effects of general anesthesia, so it doesn't cause any lasting damage. That's our goal.
The stallion Starlight is due for eye surgery today. Right before the procedure, Dr. Brandenberger and his colleague Dr. Leser perform one more exam in the stable. In the past, the animals had to be given a high dose of sedatives before surgery, but today, the blanket helps to reduce the dosage of pre- and intraoperative medications.
So now we're just about to start surgery. We've already inserted the catheter, the vein has been accessed, and the horse blanket has been put on, so the horse can relax before the surgery. So it can then also be led to the operating theater in a relaxed way for general anesthesia to be initiated. Our hope, of course, is that the muscles are already well supplied with blood, so that the circulatory system can be ramped up one more time.
Restoring good blood flow is important because during general anesthesia later, the entire circulation and thus blood flow will be decreased. Furthermore, the veterinarians feel that the horses produce fewer stress hormones due to the stimulation provided by the blanket, making it much easier to cope with the stay in the clinic. Starlight is now led from the stables to the clinic by medical student Andrei Kalinowski. Here, the resident physician administers the anesthetic before the horse is placed in a kind of padded enclosure, where it is finally put into a deep sleep. Meanwhile, the doctors prepare the operating table. The blanket is important here too, as it plays a supporting role while the animal is being operated on.
The problem with general anesthesia, especially with horses, is that the horse is heavy, right? 1,000, 1,300 pounds or more. So here's a lot of muscle mass on the table, and part of the muscle mass is squeezed off. And as an anesthesiologist in general anesthesia with horses, you always have the problem that you have to supply this muscle mass with blood. It has to be supplied with blood. Otherwise, there is muscle soreness, if you want to put it that way, or in technical jargon, what's called myositis, an inflammation in the muscle.
Inflammation in the muscle should be avoided at all costs because it can even lead to signs of paralysis, which would cause the horse to panic after surgery. Weighing in at 1,300 pounds, Starlight is now hoisted onto the operating table by crane. And before Dr. Leser begins the procedure, an additional blanket is placed on top of the horse.
Here we're operating on one of the eyes, which means this general anesthesia must be relatively deep so that this eye does not move during the operation. That's why the general anesthesia is relatively deep. And if general anesthesia is relatively deep, then the blood supply to the muscles is much poorer and the organism is really shut down. And that's why the assistance of the blanket is so important, as it really stimulates the circulatory system and blood flow.
After the half-hour surgery, the horse is moved to the recovery room, where it can slowly wake up from the anesthesia. This is a critical phase, because no one knows whether the horse won't feel pain in its legs after all, and whether it will be able to get up. Dr. Brandenberger observes his patient very closely.
There's nothing worse than performing a beautiful surgery on the horse and everything goes well. The surgery is great, but then when getting up or after getting up, there are problems, and sometimes they even die. So the consequences of the general anesthesia can be traumatic for the horse. And the better we have that under control, the better my job. Of course, my everyday life. That's when I get to call people and say, that's the surgery went well, the general anesthesia went well, he got up great, he's already back in the box and he's doing well. That's the best phone call. That's the best kind of phone call.
Thanks to the experienced doctors and the additional support provided by the Bemer blanket, everything went great during the surgery, and in just a few days, the stallion will be allowed to go home. Veterinarians aren't the only ones won over by the idea of applying the Bemer horse set. Katharina Grünzel has also been using the set in her work for several years. The 32-year-old is a physical therapist who specializes in horses. The blanket even helps to facilitate the very first contact with a new patient. Just creating a connection with the horse takes a lot of time, especially when it's nervous. The Bemer horse sit makes this work easier for me in the sense that the horses are much calmer during this whole introduction. They open up much more. I can read the animals better, understand where the problems are, especially in the musculoskeletal system. Of course, this makes my work much more effective. In addition, the stimulation with a special physical signal makes it possible to reach deep tissue areas. She could achieve the same by using massage, but massage is very strenuous physically, especially with horses. Actually, opening up tissue through massage, achieving relaxation, achieving better blood circulation is very time-consuming. The benefit for me is that this time is much shorter now. The process is accelerated, blood circulation is stimulated much faster, and the tissue is softer, making it much faster for me to penetrate deep tissue and much deeper areas. The greatest happiness on earth, a German saying goes, is found on the back of a horse. And to keep it that way, the Bemer horse set definitely offers a great supplement to conventional medical approaches. And not just preventatively, to make everyday life easier for horses, but also during regeneration, after heavy strain, and after periods of illness. And the healthier the horse, the happier the rider.